At my daughter's charity gala, she auctioned me off for $3. Who wants to buy my boring old mother? The room exploded with laughter. I stood frozen at her words, until a man's voice echoed from the back, $3 million. The entire room fell silent instantly. Then the man added one more sentence that made my daughter's face turn pale. And that night, she was the one trembling in front of the crowd. Thank you for being here with me. Drop a comment and let me know what city or country you're watching from and how your day has been. I read more comments than you think. A quick note, some details in this story are fictionalized to enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to real people or settings is unintentional, though the takeaway may still resonate. The spotlight was so bright I could barely see the faces in the crowd. My daughter Victoria stood beside me on the stage, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, her smile wide and practiced. The ballroom of the Portland Grand Hotel was packed maybe 300 people in evening gowns and tailored suits, all here for her charity gala. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria said into the microphone, her voice smooth and confident, I have a very special auction item for you tonight. I felt a flutter of pride. She'd asked me to come up here, told me it would be meaningful. I thought maybe she was going to honor me, say something kind about the years I spent raising her alone after her father passed. Maybe she'd even thank me. Instead, she turned to the crowd and said, Who wants to buy my boring old mother for $3? The room erupted in laughter. I froze. My mouth went dry. My hands started trembling. I looked at Victoria, waiting for her to laugh too, to say it was a joke, but she didn't. She just stood there, microphone in hand, that same bright smile plastered across her face. Come on, folks. She continued, her tone light and teasing. $3. That's less than a latte. Surely someone here can spare that for this. Well, let's call her dead weight. More laughter, louder this time. I felt my knees buckle. The word echoed in my head, dead weight. My own daughter, my only child. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep every night after her father died. The teenager I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. The woman I'd flown across the country to support when she told me she needed me. And now she was auctioning me off like a piece of used furniture. I tried to speak, to say something, but my throat closed up. The lights were too bright. The room was too loud. I couldn't breathe. Victoria glanced at me, and for just a second I saw something flicker in her eyes, something cold and calculating. Then she turned back to the crowd. No takers, she said, mock disappointed. Really, not even for $3? Silence. The laughter had stopped. People were looking at each other now, uncomfortable. A few whispered. Someone coughed. And then from the back of the room, a voice, deep, steady, and commanding, cut through the quiet. $3 million. Every head in the ballroom turned. A man stepped forward from the shadows near the entrance. He was tall, maybe 65, with silver hair and a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. His face was calm, unreadable. He walked down the center aisle, his shoes clicking against the marble floor, and the crowd parted for him like water. Victoria's smile faltered, just for a moment, but I saw it. The man reached the stage and pulled something from his jacket, a checkbook. He clicked open a pen, wrote something quickly, tore out the check, and held it up for everyone to see. $3 million, he repeated, his voice louder now, for Eleanor Hartley. My name, he knew my name. I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Who was this man? Why was he doing this? He turned to face the crowd, still holding the check, and his expression hardened. My name is Gerald Brennan, he said, his voice ringing out across the silent ballroom, and I didn't come here to bid on anyone. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the audience, then landing on Victoria. I came here to stop a crime. I didn't understand. Crime. What crime? I stood frozen on the stage, trying to make sense of what Gerald Brennan had just said. The ballroom, which had been roaring with laughter moments ago, was now silent. 300 people stared at us. I turned to look at Victoria. Her face had gone pale ashen. Her eyes darted between Gerald and the crowd, her hands clenched so tightly around the microphone that her knuckles turned white. Victoria, I whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. Gerald stepped closer, his expression calm but firm. He still held that check, $3 million made out in my name, but now I realized it wasn't generosity. It was a trap. Ladies and gentlemen, Gerald said, his voice carrying across the room, my name is Gerald Brennan. I'm a private investigator, and for the past 3 months, I've been working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to uncover a fraud scheme involving the Bright Future Foundation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My stomach dropped. Bright Future Foundation, Victoria's charity, the one she'd built from the ground up. Gerald continued, his tone steady. Over the past 18 months, approximately $1.2 million in donations has disappeared from this organization. The money was funneled through shell accounts all opened under one name. He paused, then turned to look directly at me. Eleanor Hartley. My breath caught. No, that wasn't possible. I didn't. I started, but my voice cracked. The crowd was staring at me now. Not at Victoria, at me. Some looked shocked, others suspicious. A woman in the front row whispered to the man beside her, and he nodded, his eyes narrowing. I felt like the floor was tilting. Before I could say anything else, the double doors at the back swung open. 3 people walked in, 2 men and a woman, all wearing dark suits with badges on their belts. The woman led the way, her expression serious. She stopped at the edge of the stage and held up a leather credential case. Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI, she said, her voice clear and authoritative. We're going to need everyone to remain seated and calm. FBI. The word hit me like a punch. This wasn't a joke. This was real. I looked at Victoria again, desperate for her to explain. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the agents, and her face had gone from pale to something hard and desperate. This is insane, Victoria shouted suddenly, her voice sharp and panicked. She pointed at me, her hand shaking. She's lying. She's the one who took the money. I trusted her, and she stole from my foundation. The accusation hung in the air like a knife. I stared at her, my own daughter, and felt something crack inside my chest. Victoria, I whispered, trembling. What are you talking about? She didn't answer. She just kept pointing at me, her eyes wild, as if saying it louder would make it true. Gerald stepped between us, his hand gently touching my arm. His voice was low, meant only for me. Mrs. Hartley, he said quietly, you're not in trouble. I know you didn't do this, but we need your help. Can you do that? I nodded, even though I didn't understand, even though my whole world was spinning. Agent Mitchell and the 2 other agents moved forward. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at Victoria, Ms. Victoria Hartley. Agent Mitchell said, her tone calm but firm. We'd like to ask you some questions. You have the right to remain silent. No. Victoria's voice cracked. She took a step back, her heel catching on the stage edge. You can't do this. I didn't do anything wrong. It was her. But the agents kept coming. And in that moment, standing under the blinding lights with 300 people watching and my daughter screaming accusations at me, I realized something. My life had just changed. Completely. And there was no going back. But to understand how I ended up on that stage, how my name ended up on those accounts, I have to go back. 6 months earlier, Idaho, a quiet afternoon in late September. I was in my kitchen, the one with yellow curtains and the old linoleum floor that creaked when you walked across it. I'd lived in that house for 30 years. Raised Victoria there after her father passed when she was 8. It was small, but it was mine. And then out of nowhere, Victoria came home. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, not since she moved to Portland to start her charity work. We talked on the phone, occasionally brief, surface-level conversations where she always seemed distracted. But that day, she knocked on my door with a bakery box in her hands and that bright, familiar smile I remembered from when she was little. Mom, she said, throwing her arms around me, I missed you so much. I hugged her back, my heart swelling. Victoria, sweetheart, what are you doing here? I wanted to surprise you, she said, holding up the box. I brought your favorite, apple pie from Henderson's. Henderson's Bakery, the one on Main Street, she remembered. We sat at the kitchen table, autumn sunlight streaming through the window, and for the first time in years, it felt like I had my daughter back. She told me about Portland, about the foundation she'd started, Bright Future Foundation, a charity that helped low-income families with housing and education. I'm so proud of you, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Your father would be too. Her smile flickered for just a second, But then it was back bright as ever. "Actually, Mom," she said, leaning forward, "that's part of why I'm here. The foundation is growing faster than I expected, and I need to set up a guardian board, a group of trusted people who can oversee things and make sure everything's legitimate." "That sounds wonderful," I said, "and I want you to be on it." I blinked, surprised. "Me? Of course." She said, her voice warm. "You raised me to care about people, Mom. You're the most trustworthy person I know. Having your name attached to the foundation would mean everything to me." I felt a lump rise in my throat. After 2 years of distance of feeling like I'd lost her, she was here, asking for my help, telling me I mattered. "I'd be honored," I said. Victoria grinned and pulled a manila folder from her bag. "There's just some paperwork we need to file with the state. It's all pro forma, just a formality." She slid the papers across the table. I glanced at them, dense blocks of text legal jargon I didn't fully understand. Maybe 5 or 6 pages all clipped together. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, it's nothing complicated," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Just a board member agreement. It says you're affiliated with the foundation and that you support its mission. Totally standard." She handed me a pen, her expression so open and earnest that I didn't think twice. I signed. My name, Eleanor Hartley, in blue ink at the bottom of each page. "Perfect," Victoria said, sliding the papers back into the folder. She stood and hugged me again, tighter this time. "You're the best mom. I mean it." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about her apartment in Portland, about the old house, about nothing and everything. And when she finally left standing on my porch with the evening sun sinking behind the mountains, I felt happier than I had in months. But later that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake a small, nagging thought. Why did she need my signature? She said it was standard. She said it was just a formality. But she'd flown all the way to Idaho for it. She'd brought my favorite pie. She'd hugged me like she used to when she was little. And she'd left with those papers in less than 3 hours. I told myself I was being silly. She was my daughter. She loved me. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me. But deep down in a place I didn't want to look, a quiet voice whispered, "Why didn't you read what you signed?" I tried to forget that nagging voice in my head. I told myself I was being paranoid. Victoria was my daughter. She was doing good work. She needed my help. But 2 weeks later, the phone rang. "Mom." Victoria's voice was tight-clipped. Not the warm, easy tone she'd used when she sat at my kitchen table with apple pie. "I need you to sign something else." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "It's just one more document," she said quickly. "For the foundation. I need a power of attorney so I can handle the financial side of things faster. It'll make everything more efficient." "Can't you mail it to me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, Mom. I need it notarized today. I'm flying out there tomorrow morning." She hung up before I could ask any more questions. The next afternoon, Victoria was back at my door, but this time there was no bakery box, no warm hug. She walked in with a leather briefcase, her heels clicking against the linoleum, and set a thick stack of papers on the kitchen table. "Here," she said, flipping the pages open. "I just need your signature on these." I stared at the documents. There had to be at least 20 pages, all dense with legal terms I didn't understand. Power of attorney, authorization, financial proxy. "Victoria," I said slowly, "what exactly does this mean?" She sighed, her hand already hovering over the pages with a pen. "It means I can access accounts and move money on behalf of the foundation without having to get approval every single time. It speeds things up, Mom, that's all." "But why does it have to be in my name?" She looked up at me, then her eyes sharp. "Because people trust you, Mom. Your name has weight. You spent 30 years teaching in this community. When donors see Eleanor Hartley on the board, they feel safe. They give more." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think this was just about efficiency, about trust, about helping people. But something in her voice, something hard and impatient, made my chest tighten. "I don't know if I'm comfortable with this," I said quietly. Victoria's jaw clenched. She set the pen down, her expression shifting from impatience to something softer, more vulnerable. "Mom," she said, her voice dropping, "I'm drowning out there. Portland is expensive. The foundation is growing faster than I can handle. I'm working 16-hour days and I'm doing it all alone." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I need you," she said. "Not just your signature, you. I want you to move to Portland. I want you close. I miss you, Mom. I need my mom." Her eyes were wet. Her grip on my hand was tight. And just like that, the doubt melted. This was my daughter. The little girl I'd held when her father died. The teenager who cried in my arms the night before she left for college. She was asking for help. She was asking for me. "Okay," I whispered. Victoria's face lit up. "Really? I'll sign and I'll think about moving." "Thank you, Mom," she said, squeezing my hand. "Thank you so much." She slid the papers toward me and I signed, page after page. My name, Eleanor Hartley, over and over in blue ink. When I finished, Victoria gathered the documents, tucked them into her briefcase, and stood. "I'll start looking for an apartment for you," she said, already heading toward the door. "Something small near my office. You're going to love Portland, Mom, I promise." And then she was gone. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after she left, staring at the empty space where the papers had been. That night, I lay awake in bed, the autumn wind rattling the windows. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, the way Victoria had looked at me, the way her voice had changed when I hesitated, the way she'd left so quickly, briefcase in hand, as if she couldn't get out fast enough. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself she needed me. But deep down in that quiet place, I didn't want to acknowledge a voice whispered, "Something's wrong." The apartment Victoria found for me was small, a one-bedroom on the third floor of a building near downtown Portland with a view of the parking lot and a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. It wasn't home, but Victoria had picked it out herself, paid the deposit, and helped me unpack the few boxes I'd brought from Idaho. "You're going to love it here, Mom," she'd said, squeezing my hand before she left that first night. "I'll come by every week. We'll have dinner. It'll be just like old times." 2 weeks passed. She didn't come by once. I told myself she was busy. The foundation was growing. She had responsibilities. I unpacked my dishes, arranged my books on the shelf, and tried to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Then on a Tuesday morning, the letter came. It was in my mailbox, tucked between a flyer for a pizza place and a bill from the electric company, a white envelope with the logo of First National Bank in the corner. I didn't recognize the name. I'd never had an account with First National. I opened it, standing in the hallway, my keys still in my hand. "Dear Mrs. Eleanor Hartley, this letter is to inform you of recent activity on account number 4471-8832, registered under your name and social security number. As of October 15th, a withdrawal of $340,000 has been processed." The words blurred. $340,000. My hands started shaking. I read it again, slower this time, trying to make sense of it. "Account registered under your name." I didn't open this account. I'd never even heard of it. I stumbled back into my apartment, the letter clutched in my hand, and sat down at the tiny kitchen table. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Someone had mixed up names, social security numbers, something. I grabbed my phone and called Victoria. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "Mom," her voice was clipped, distracted. "I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" "Victoria the First." My voice cracked. "I got a letter from a bank, First National. It says there's an account in my name and someone withdrew $340,000. Silence. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard her exhale, slow and deliberate. "It's a clerical error, Mom," she said, her tone flat. "I'll handle it." "But I didn't open an account with—" I said I'll handle it. Her voice was cold, sharp. Not the voice of the daughter who'd hugged me 2 weeks ago and promised dinners together. "Victoria, I don't understand." "Mom, I have to go. I'll call you later." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, the dial tone humming in my ear. She'd hung up on me. I looked back down at the letter, my hands still trembling. I read the address at the top, my address the apartment Victoria had chosen for me. My name was printed clearly in bold letters. Eleanor Hartley, not a typo, not a mistake. And $340,000 was gone. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the drawer of the kitchen table beneath a stack of old bills and recipes I'd brought from Idaho. I didn't know what else to do with it. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know if I was supposed to be angry or scared or what is my daughter doing with my name? The question sat in my chest like a stone. I thought about the papers I'd signed. The ones at my kitchen table in Idaho, just a formality, Mom. The power of attorney, people trust you. I thought about how quickly Victoria had gathered them up, tucked them into her briefcase, and left. I thought about the way her voice had sounded on the phone just now. Cold, dismissive, like I was an inconvenience. I sat at that table for a long time, the autumn light fading outside the window, and realized something I didn't want to admit. I didn't know my daughter anymore. And worse, I wasn't sure I ever had. A week later, Victoria came to my apartment. But this time, she wasn't smiling. She didn't knock. She used the spare key I'd given her and walked in while I was making tea. I turned around startled and found her standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "Victoria," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't know you were coming." "We need to talk, Mom." She didn't sit down. She didn't take off her coat. She just stood there staring at me. "About the bank letter," I said quickly. "You said it was a clerical error, but I haven't heard anything, and You're confused, Mom." I blinked. "What? You're confused?" She repeated, her tone flat. "You're 70 years old. You just moved to a new city. You're stressed, and it's affecting your memory." "Victoria, I'm not confused. The letter was..." "There is no letter." Her words hit me like a slap. "Yes, there is," I said, my voice rising. "I called you. You said you'd handle it." She shook her head slowly. "Mom, you're imagining things. I think we need to get you to a doctor, a specialist." "A specialist?" My hands started trembling. "What are you talking about?" "A psychiatrist, Mom. I think you're having some kind of episode." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "I'm not having an episode. I saw the letter. It had my name on it." "Stop it!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. "You're losing your mind, Mom. You're paranoid. You're making things up, and I'm not going to stand here and listen to this." I stepped back, shocked. I'd never heard her speak to me like that. "Victoria." I whispered, "Why are you doing this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked past me, picked up my phone from the coffee table and held it up. "What's your passcode?" "Why, give me your passcode, Mom." "Victoria, I don't..." She sighed and started tapping the screen. After a few tries, she got in. I'd never changed it from the default. She scrolled through my apps, then turned the screen toward me. "See this, your email. You've been sending strange messages to your friends in Idaho, rambling about money. They're worried about you, Mom." "That's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "I haven't sent anything like that." But doubt crept in. Had I? Maybe I had and forgotten. No, I would remember. Victoria opened the settings and changed my email password. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Protecting you," she said. "From yourself. Until you see a doctor, I'm managing your accounts. For your own good." "You can't do that." "I can, Mom. I have power of attorney. You gave me permission." She picked up my phone and slipped it into her purse. "I'll hold on to this for now," she said. "You don't need to be online. It's making things worse." "Victoria, please." But she was already walking toward the door. "I'll check on you next week," she said without looking back. "Try to rest, and don't call your friends in Idaho. They don't need to worry." The door closed behind her. I stood there in the middle of my tiny apartment, the autumn light fading outside, and felt the walls close in. No phone, no email, no way to reach anyone. I was alone, completely alone. I sank down onto the couch, my hands shaking, and realized something that made my blood run cold. Victoria wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to make me look like I was losing my mind. A month passed, and I didn't leave my apartment much. Without my phone, without any way to contact my friends in Idaho, I felt completely alone. And then the insomnia started. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I couldn't stop thinking about the bank letter, about Victoria's cold voice on the phone, about the way she'd walked out with my phone in her purse. Some nights I didn't sleep at all. 2 weeks into it, Victoria knocked on my door. She was holding a small pharmacy bag. "Mom, you look terrible," she said, stepping inside. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. She set the bag on the counter and pulled out a small orange bottle. "I talked to a doctor. She said you might be having trouble sleeping, stress from the move, so I got you something to help. Sleeping pills. Take one before bed," Victoria said, pressing the bottle into my hand. "They'll help you rest." I looked down at the label. Zolpidem, 10 milligrams. Take one tablet at bedtime. "I don't know if I need..." "Mom, she interrupted, her voice firm. "You need to sleep. Just take them." I was so tired, so exhausted. I nodded. She left without another word. That night, I took one pill. I fell asleep almost immediately, deep, dreamless sleep. The second night, I took another. By the third night, something was wrong. I woke up gasping. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The room was spinning. I couldn't catch my breath. I stumbled to the bathroom and started vomiting. I don't know how long I was on the floor. Then I heard knocking, loud, frantic. "Mrs. Hartley, are you okay?" It was Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor across the hall. She must have heard me. "I'm calling an ambulance," she said. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. The paramedics came. They carried me out on a stretcher and took me to the hospital. At the emergency room, a doctor examined me, Dr. Miller, his badge said. He ran tests, checked my heart, and finally sat down beside my bed. "You had an adverse reaction to medication," he said. "Your heart rate spiked dangerously. What were you taking?" "Sleeping pills?" I whispered. "My daughter gave them to me." He frowned. "Do you still have the bottle?" I nodded. 2 hours later, Victoria arrived. She rushed into the room, her face pale, her voice panicked. "Mom, oh my God, what happened?" She took my hand, squeezed it, and looked at Dr. Miller. "Is she okay?" "She'll be fine," he said. But she had a serious reaction to the medication. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know. I just wanted to help her sleep." But when she turned to look at me when the doctor wasn't watching, I saw it. Her eyes weren't scared. They were cold, calculating. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was checking to see if it had worked. They released me the next morning. Victoria drove me home, helped me inside, and left quickly. After she was gone, I went to the bathroom. The pill bottle was still on the counter where the paramedics had left it. I picked it up and read the label again. Zolpidem, 10 milligrams. Take 1 tablet at bedtime. Then I looked at the pills themselves. They were bigger than they should have been. I turned the bottle over, squinting at the fine print on the back, the manufacturer's label. And there it was in tiny letters. 20 milligrams. Double the dose. My hands started shaking. Victoria hadn't made a mistake. She'd given me pills twice as strong as the prescription said, and she'd told me to take one every night. She had tried to hurt me, maybe worse. I wrapped the bottle in a towel and hid it in the back of a drawer. And I realized something. If I wanted to survive, I couldn't just wait for her next move. I had to fight back. I had to gather proof. The day after I left the hospital, I went to an electronics store downtown. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but the young man at the counter helped me. I told him I needed something small, something I could carry without anyone noticing. He showed me a digital voice recorder no bigger than a pack of gum. It had a clip on the back so I could attach it to the inside of my jacket pocket. "It'll pick up conversations within 10 feet, he said. "Clear audio, 30 hours of recording time." I bought it with cash. I didn't want a paper trail. That night, I clipped the recorder inside my jacket and tested it. I whispered a few words, played it back. The sound was crisp, clear. Perfect. For the next 7 weeks, I recorded everything. Every time Victoria came to my apartment. Every phone call she made while I was in the room. Every offhand comment she thought I wouldn't remember. At first, she was careful. She'd ask how I was feeling, remind me to rest, play the concerned daughter. But slowly, her mask started to slip. 2 weeks in, she came by to check on me. I asked her again about the bank letter, the one from First National. "Mom," she said, her voice tight with irritation, "I told you, there is no letter. You're imagining things." "But I saw it," I said quietly. It had my name on it. She turned to face me, her eyes cold. "No one will believe you anyway." I felt my heart skip, but I kept my face neutral, my hands steady. The recorder was running. A week later, she came by unannounced. She walked through my apartment like she owned it, opening drawers, checking the fridge. "You're not eating enough," she said. "You look terrible." "I'm fine," I said. She turned to me, her expression hard. "You know, Mom, if you keep acting like this confused paranoid, I'm going to have to put you somewhere safe." "What do you mean?" "A nursing home," she said simply. "A place where they can take care of you, where you can't hurt yourself." My blood ran cold. "You wouldn't do that," I whispered. She smiled a thin, cruel smile. "Try me. One more word about fake bank letters or conspiracies, and I'll have you committed, and no one will stop me. I have power of attorney, remember?" She left without saying goodbye. I sat on the couch for a long time after she was gone, my hands shaking, the recorder still running in my pocket. Over the next 5 weeks, I captured 23 recordings. Victoria admitting she'd opened accounts in my name. Victoria threatening to institutionalize me. Victoria telling me I was worthless, that no one cared about me, that I should just shut up and disappear. Each recording was worse than the last. I saved every file. I labeled them by date. I kept the recorder charged and hidden in a drawer beneath my dish towels. And then one night, I made copies. I went to a print shop downtown and paid a teenager to transfer the files onto 2 USB drives. I mailed one to Robert Daniels, a lawyer I'd known back in Idaho, a man I trusted. I kept the other drive locked in a box under my bed. If anything happened to me, someone would know the truth. That night, I sat alone in my apartment with my laptop and listened to all 23 recordings, one after another. Victoria's voice filled the room, sharp, cold, cruel. "No one will believe you. You're losing your mind. I'll put you in a home where no one will ever find you." I listened until my hands stopped shaking, until the fear turned into something else: anger, determination. I looked at the calendar on my kitchen wall. 1 week until Victoria's charity gala. The event she'd been planning for months. The event where she'd stand on stage and smile and pretend to be a hero. I closed my laptop. I knew what I had to do. It was time to act. 1 week before the gala, Victoria showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She used her key and walked in holding a cream-colored envelope with gold trim. Her hair was styled perfectly, her suit pressed and expensive. She looked every bit the successful charity executive she pretended to be. "Mom," she said, her voice bright and warm, the voice she used when other people were watching. "I have something for you." She handed me the envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation printed on thick cardstock with elegant script. "You are cordially invited to the Bright Future Foundation Annual Charity Gala." My hands tightened on the card. "I want you there, Mom," Victoria said, sitting down on my couch like she owned the place. "Not just as a guest. I want you on stage with me." I looked up at her, my heart pounding. "On stage? Yes," she said, leaning forward, her eyes bright with something I couldn't quite read. "I want everyone to see the woman who inspired me, the woman who taught me everything I know about caring for others." The lies came so easily to her. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the invitation in my hands. "It'll be beautiful," Victoria continued. 300 people, donors, politicians, community leaders. "I'm going to give a speech about the foundation, about all the good we're doing. And I want you beside me when I do it." I knew what this was. This wasn't an honor. This wasn't gratitude. This was the final move, the ultimate humiliation. She was going to put me on that stage in front of everyone while I was confused, while I was losing my mind, and use me as proof of her own goodness. Look at me, the devoted daughter, taking care of her sick, elderly mother. And if I said anything, if I tried to tell the truth, she'd point to my delusions and have me carted off to a nursing home before the night was over. It was a trap. But as I sat there holding that invitation, I realized something. It was also an opportunity. 300 people, donors, politicians, community leaders, 300 witnesses. "Okay," I said quietly. Victoria blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Yes," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'll be there." Her smile widened, sharp and triumphant. "Perfect. I knew you'd say yes." She stood smoothing her jacket. "Wear something nice, Mom. Something elegant. This is going to be your big night." She walked to the door, paused, and turned back. "Oh, and Mom," she said, her voice dropping, losing that false warmth. "Don't embarrass me. No talk about bank letters or conspiracies. Just smile and wave. Can you do that?" I nodded. She left without another word. I sat alone in my apartment, the invitation still in my hands, and let out a long, slow breath. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd stand on that stage silent and confused while she played the loving daughter in front of a crowd. But she was wrong. I stood and walked to my bedroom. I opened the drawer where I'd hidden the voice recorder and the backup USB drive. I checked the battery full charge. I scrolled through the files, all 23 recordings, safe and intact. I thought about Robert Daniels, my lawyer in Idaho, who now had a copy of everything. I thought about the nursing home threat, the poison pills, the stolen money, the isolation. I thought about the way Victoria had looked at me in the hospital, cold calculating, checking to see if I was still alive. And I thought about that stage. 300 people. I went to my closet and found the navy blue dress I'd brought from Idaho, the one I used to wear to church. Simple, dignified. I laid it out on the bed. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, the recorder in my hand, and whispered the words I'd been holding inside for months. I'm ready. The silence after Gerald's words was deafening. I came to stop a crime. I stood frozen on the stage under the spotlight, my heart pounding. 300 people stared at us, at me, at Victoria, at the man holding a $3 million check. And then the double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. 3 people walked in. Dark suits, calm, commanding presence. The woman in front, Agent Sarah Mitchell, the same FBI agent who'd spoken earlier, held up her badge again as she approached the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice clear and authoritative, "please remain in your seats. Stay calm. No one is in danger." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. A glass shattered on the floor. Beside Agent Mitchell stood 2 other agents, a tall man with sharp eyes and another man older with graying hair and a serious expression. The older man stepped forward and held up his own badge. "Agent Daniel Foster, FBI," he said, his voice steady and firm. "I've been working alongside Agent Mitchell on this investigation for the past 3 months." He turned to look at me, his expression calm but direct. "Mrs. Eleanor Hartley." I nodded, unable to speak. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Hartley, we've been working with Mr. Brennan for 3 months. We know what's been happening. You're not in trouble, but we need your help." I looked past him at Victoria. Her face had gone ashen. Her hands were shaking. For the first time in months, I saw real fear in her eyes. "She's lying!" Victoria shouted suddenly, pointing at me. "She stole the money. She opened those accounts. I tried to stop her, but she threatened me." The crowd murmured louder. Some people were looking at me with suspicion now. Gerald stepped forward, his hand resting on my shoulder. "Mrs. Hartley has nothing to hide," he said calmly. "She's a victim." Agent Foster nodded. He turned to Agent Mitchell and the other agent. "Secure the exits. No one leaves until we've taken statements." Agent Mitchell moved toward the doors. The younger agent stayed beside Foster, watching Victoria. "Ms. Victoria Hartley." Agent Foster said, his tone shifting, calm but edged with steel. "We have evidence linking you to fraudulent accounts opened under your mother's name. Bank records, financial transfers, witness testimony. You have the right to remain silent, but I advise you to cooperate." "I didn't do anything." Victoria's voice cracked. "You can't prove anything. She's senile. She doesn't even know where she is." "Mrs. Hartley," Agent Foster said firmly, "sit down." Victoria didn't move. She just stood there trembling, her eyes darting between me and the agents. I felt something inside me shift. The fear that had gripped me for months, the fear that no one would believe me, started to crack. Because they believed me. Agent Foster turned back to me. "Mrs. Hartley, Agent Mitchell and I have been investigating the Bright Future Foundation for 3 months. We know about the missing donations. We know about the accounts in your name. We know about the threats." He paused, his expression softening slightly. "But we need to hear it from you. Can you tell us what happened?" I looked at Victoria. She was staring at me, her face twisted with rage and desperation. Then I looked back at Agent Foster. I nodded. "Yes," I said, my voice steady now. "I can tell you everything." Before I could say another word, Victoria spun toward me. Her face was twisted, no longer pale, but flushed with desperation. She pointed at me, her hand shaking, her voice rising to a pitch I'd never heard before. "She did this," Victoria shouted. "She stole the money, she opened those accounts and forged my signature, and now she's trying to blame me." The crowd erupted in whispers. Heads turned, people leaned toward each other, murmuring. I saw a woman in the front row narrow her eyes at me. A man beside her shook his head, his expression skeptical. They were starting to believe her. Victoria took a step closer to me, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her face. "I tried to help her," she said, her voice trembling. "I brought her to Portland so I could take care of her. I paid for her apartment. I checked on her every week. And this is how she repays me." She turned back to the crowd, her hands clasped together like she was pleading. "My mother is sick." she said, her voice cracking. She's confused. She doesn't understand what's real anymore. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe it, but she's been having episodes. Paranoia, delusions. She thinks people are stealing from her. She thinks Her voice broke into a sob. She thinks I'm trying to hurt her. The crowd murmured louder now. I saw sympathy on some faces, pity. A few people were nodding like they understood. I stood there silent and let her words wash over me. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't shake my head or protest. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw it, the fear behind the tears, the panic behind the performance. She was good. She'd always been good at this. But I'd spent the last 7 weeks recording her. I knew what her real voice sounded like when no one else was listening. Victoria's eyes met mine, and for just a second the mask slipped. I saw the cold calculation underneath. She was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to shout, to defend myself, to look unstable. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I just stood there calm and held her gaze. Agent Foster stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Hartley, please step back." Victoria ignored him. She turned to Gerald, her voice desperate now. "You don't understand. She's not well. She needs help. I've been trying to get her to see a doctor, but she won't listen." "Enough," Gerald said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Victoria stopped mid-sentence, her mouth open, her eyes wide. Gerald looked at me. His expression was calm, almost kind. "Mrs. Hartley." He said, "Do you have anything you'd like to say?" The room went silent. 300 people stared at me. I could feel the weight of their eyes, their judgment, their doubt. I took a slow breath. Then I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around the small digital recorder I'd been carrying for the past week, the same one I'd used to capture 23 conversations with my daughter, the same one that held the truth in her own words. I pulled it out and held it up so everyone could see. It was small, no bigger than a deck of cards. Black plastic, a tiny red light blinking on the side. "I have 23 recordings." I said, my voice steady and clear. The room went dead silent. Victoria's face drained of color. I looked directly at her, then turned to Agent Foster. 23 conversations with my daughter, I continued, recorded over the past 7 weeks. Every threat, every confession, every lie. I held up the recorder higher. "Would you like to hear them? If you're still here with me right now, comment 1 so I know you're standing with me. And tell me, if you were on that stage accused in front of hundreds of people, would you stay silent or would you press play and let the truth speak for itself?" And just a gentle note before we continue, the next part of this story includes dramatized elements and may not reflect real events in every detail. If this isn't something you wish to follow, you're free to stop here. Gerald didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, took the recorder from my hand, and walked to the side of the stage where the event staff had set up the sound system. A young man in a black vest hurried over and Gerald spoke to him quietly, gesturing toward the speakers mounted on either side of the ballroom. The young man nodded, pulled out a cable, and connected the recorder to the soundboard. Within seconds, the first recording began to play. Victoria's voice filled the room, clear, cold, unmistakable. "No one will believe you, Mom. You're just a confused old woman. No one cares what you think." The ballroom went silent. 300 people sat frozen in their seats, staring at the stage. I could see their faces: shock, confusion, disbelief. A woman in the front row brought her hand to her mouth. A man beside her leaned forward, his brow furrowed. I stood there, my hands folded in front of me, and let the recording speak. Victoria's voice continued sharp and dismissive. "You're imagining things. There is no bank letter. There are no accounts. You're losing your mind." I glanced at Victoria. Her face had gone from pale to sheet white. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She was staring at the speakers like they were a bomb about to explode. The first recording ended. Gerald nodded to the sound technician, and the second one began. This one was from 3 weeks ago. Victoria had come to my apartment unannounced, rifling through my mail while I sat at the kitchen table. Her voice came through the speakers, casual, almost bored. "I used your name because it's clean, Mom. You spent 30 years teaching. People trust you. You should be grateful I'm putting your name to good use." A murmur rippled through the crowd now. I heard gasps. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes on Victoria. She was trembling now, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Her eyes darted around the room looking for an exit, looking for help, looking for any way out. The second recording ended. Gerald started the third. This was the worst one. The one I'd recorded 2 weeks before the gala. Victoria had come to my apartment late at night, drunk and angry. She'd said things I'd never forget. Her voice crackled through the speakers, slurred but venomous. "If you say one more word about this, if you tell anyone, I will put you in a home, Mom. Somewhere far away, somewhere no one will ever find you, and you'll rot there, alone. Do you understand me?" The ballroom erupted, not in noise and silence so thick it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. People weren't whispering anymore. They were staring, mouths open, eyes wide. I saw a woman in a blue dress stand up, her hand over her heart. A man in the back shook his head, slowly, disbelief written across his face. Gerald stopped the recording. The silence lingered. Then Victoria's voice, her real voice, raw and desperate, cut through the quiet. "That's not real," she screamed. She pointed at me, her hand shaking violently. "She faked those. She hired someone to fake my voice. It's not real." Agent Foster stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. "Ms. Hartley." He said, his voice carrying across the room, "We've had these recordings analyzed by forensic audio experts, voice pattern recognition, background noise authentication, timestamp verification." He paused, his eyes locked on Victoria. "They're real." Victoria's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of a chair on the stage to steady herself, her face twisted in panic. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not. They're real," Agent Foster repeated louder this time. "Every single one of them." He turned to the 2 other agents standing near the stage. "Take her into custody." Victoria's scream echoed through the ballroom. "No, you can't do this." I didn't, but the agents were already moving. The younger man took her arm gently but firmly. The woman agent pulled out a pair of handcuffs. I stood there watching and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Victoria collapsed into the chair behind her. Her legs gave out and she sank down, gripping the armrests with white-knuckled hands. Her face was no longer flushed with anger or desperation. It was pale, ghostly pale, and her eyes were wide, glassy, like she couldn't quite believe what was happening. The 2 agents stood on either side of her, waiting, and I walked toward her. The ballroom was silent. 300 people watched as I crossed the stage, my heels clicking softly against the polished wood. I stopped a few feet away from her, close enough to see the tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I just looked at her. This was my daughter, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep every night after her father died, the teenager I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, the woman I'd moved across the country for because she said she needed me. And now she was sitting here, handcuffs glinting in the spotlight because she'd tried to destroy me. "I loved you, Victoria," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It was steady, calm, final. "I would have given you anything," I continued. "Anything you asked for. All you had to do was tell me the truth. Tell me you needed help. Tell me you were struggling." Victoria looked up at me, her face crumpling. "Mom, why did you do this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Her voice came out choked, broken. "I needed the money, Mom," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was desperate. The foundation was failing. I had debts. I didn't know what else to do." I stared at her. For a moment, I almost believed her, almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the way she'd looked at me in the hospital after I'd nearly died from those pills, the cold calculation in her eyes. The way she'd taken my phone, changed my passwords, cut me off from everyone I knew. I shook my head slowly. "You didn't need money," I said, my voice harder now. "You needed control." Victoria flinched like I'd slapped her. "You didn't just take my name," I continued. "You took my voice, my dignity, my freedom. You tried to make me look insane so no one would believe me. You isolated me. You poisoned me. You were willing to destroy me, your own mother, just so you could keep your perfect life intact." "Mom, please." Victoria reached out toward me, her hand trembling. I stepped back. "You didn't need money," I repeated. "You needed control, and you were willing to destroy me to get it." Agent Foster stepped forward, then pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Miss Hartley, stand up, please." Victoria didn't move. She just sat there staring at me, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "Mom," she whispered, "please, don't let them do this. I'm your daughter. I'm all you have." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something inside me break. Not in a painful way, in a freeing way. "No," I said softly, "you're not." Agent Foster took her arm gently but firmly and helped her to her feet. The other agent stepped forward with the handcuffs, and I heard the sharp click as they locked around Victoria's wrists. "Mom, please." Victoria's voice rose to a scream, now raw and desperate. "Help me, don't let them take me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Her voice echoed through the silent ballroom, but I didn't answer. I just turned around. I walked across the stage, my back straight, my head held high, and I didn't look back. Not when Victoria screamed my name. Not when I heard her sobbing. Not when the agents led her toward the side exit. I walked down the steps at the side of the stage, and Gerald was there waiting. He offered me his arm, and I took it, my hand trembling just slightly. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired and free. Before we move forward, please remember this story is a fictional narrative created for storytelling and reflection. If it resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this video with someone who might need to hear its message. 3 weeks after the Gala agent Daniel Foster knocked on my apartment door. I'd been expecting him. He'd called the day before to say he was coming with the official report. Still, when I opened the door and saw him standing there with a manila folder, my stomach tightened. "Mrs. Hartley," he said, "may I come in?" We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd signed those papers for Victoria months ago. Agent Foster opened the folder. "The investigation is complete," he said. "Victoria Hartley has been charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. She stole approximately $1.2 million from the Bright Future Foundation over 18 months. $1.2 million. The number felt unreal. She opened multiple accounts in your name," he continued. "Used your social security number, forged your signature, and funneled donations through shell accounts. All of those accounts have been closed. Your name has been cleared. You won't face any charges, Mrs. Hartley." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "What happens now?" I asked. "She's awaiting trial," Agent Foster said. "Given the evidence, she'll likely take a plea deal, but she could be facing 10 to 15 years. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Agent Foster stood and handed me his business card. "If you need anything, you can reach me directly." "Thank you," I said. After he left, I sat at the table for a long time staring at the card. 10 to 15 years. Victoria was 42. By the time she got out, she'd be in her 50s. I didn't know how to feel about that. 2 days later, Gerald Brennan came by. I'd invited him over for coffee. He'd saved my life in a way, and I wanted to thank him properly. I also wanted to understand why he'd done it. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his expression calm and kind. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "You helped me." He smiled faintly. "Still, I want you to know the truth." He set down his coffee cup. "I'm a private investigator. I specialize in financial fraud. 4 months ago, the FBI contacted me about irregularities in the Bright Future Foundation. They asked me to look into it." He paused. "Your name kept coming up, Eleanor Hartley. But the more I looked, the less sense it made. You had no criminal record, no motive. So I kept digging." "You knew I didn't do it," I said quietly. "I knew," he said, "but I needed proof. So I went to the Gala. I made that $3 million bid because I knew it would force everything into the open. I knew Victoria would panic. And I knew you'd have a chance to tell your story." I stared at him, my throat tight. "You were very brave, Mrs. Hartley," he said softly. I shook my head. I didn't have a choice. "Yes, you did," he said. "You could have stayed silent, but you didn't." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question I'd been holding inside for 3 weeks. "Can I see her?" Gerald didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly. "She's in county jail," he said. "Awaiting trial. I can arrange a visit if that's what you want." I nodded. "It is." 1 month later, I sat in a visitation room at the county jail. The walls were beige, the floor scuffed. A metal table bolted to the ground separated us. A guard stood in the corner watching. And across from me, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, was my daughter. Victoria looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. Her eyes red and swollen like she'd been crying for days. She stared down at the table, her hands clasped tightly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. "I know that doesn't mean anything," she continued, her voice cracking. "I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I am. I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down her face. I took a slow breath. "Why Victoria?" I asked quietly. "Why did you hate me so much?" She flinched. "I didn't—" She stopped shaking, her head, tears falling onto the table. "I didn't hate you, Mom." "Then why—" I asked again, steady but firm. "Why did you try to destroy me?" Victoria looked up, her face crumpling. "Because I hated myself," she whispered. The words hung in the air. "I hated myself," she repeated, her voice raw. "I hated that I couldn't make the foundation work. I hated that I was failing. I hated that I wasn't good enough." She sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "And I took it out on you," she said. "I needed someone to blame, someone to control, and you were there. You were always there, and you loved me, and I—" She covered her face with her cuffed hands, trembling. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I sat there watching my daughter fall apart, and I felt something inside me break, not in a painful way, in a releasing way. I'd spent months afraid of her, angry at her, wondering how she could do what she did. But now, seeing her like this broken, lost, drowning in guilt, I realized something. She wasn't a monster. She was just broken, and I couldn't fix her. "I forgive you," I said quietly. Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What?" "I forgive you," I repeated calmly. She stared at me, tears streaming. "Mom, but I can't forget," I said, cutting her off gently. "I forgive you, but I can't forget what you did. I can't go back to the way things were. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly, her face crumpling again. "I understand," she whispered. I stood up. Victoria stood too, her movements slow, her hands still cuffed. There was a glass partition at the edge of the table. I stepped toward it and placed my hand flat against the glass. Victoria looked at my hand for a long moment. Then she lifted her cuffed hands and pressed them against the glass on her side. We stood there, separated by that thin layer, our hands aligned but not touching. I looked at her one last time. "Goodbye, Victoria," I said softly. Her face twisted in pain. "Mom, please," but I was already turning away. I walked toward the door, my back straight, my steps steady. Behind me, I heard her sob, loud, broken, desperate. But I didn't turn around. I walked out of that room, through the heavy metal doors, past the guards and the buzzing locks, and out into the sunlight. And I knew deep in my heart that I would never see her again. 1 year later, I stood at the front of a classroom at the Portland Community Center. 15 seniors sat in folding chairs, notebooks in their laps, eyes focused on me. Some were in their 60s, others in their 70s or 80s. All of them had come to learn, and I was there to teach them. Financial safety for seniors. The sign on the door read. It was a free class I'd started 6 months ago after everything settled, after the trial, after the headlines faded, after I stopped waking up every morning wondering if I was still in danger. I clicked to the next slide on the projector. "Red flags," I said, pointing to the screen. "If someone asks you to sign documents without explaining them, that's a red flag. If someone tries to isolate you from friends or family, that's a red flag. If someone pressures you to give them access to your bank accounts—" I paused, looking out at the faces in front of me. "That's a red flag," I said quietly. A woman in the front row raised her hand. She was maybe 70 with short gray hair and kind eyes. "Yeah," I said. "How did you find the courage to fight back?" she asked. "When it was your own daughter." The room went quiet. I took a slow breath. I realized that staying silent would kill me, I said. Not physically, though it almost did, but emotionally, spiritually. Staying silent meant letting someone else define who I was. It meant giving up my voice, my dignity, my right to be heard. I looked at each of them. "Speaking up saved my life," I said. And I'm not just talking about the FBI or the trial. I'm talking about the moment I decided I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. The moment I decided I deserved better. The woman nodded, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. After class, as people filed out, I packed up my laptop and erased the whiteboard. The room was almost empty when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're getting good at this." I turned. Gerald Brennan stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, a small smile on his face. "Gerald," I said, smiling back, "I didn't know you were here." "I slipped in late," he said, walking over. "Didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to see how you were doing." Over the past year, Gerald had become one of my closest friends. He checked in on me regularly, helped me navigate the legal aftermath, even recommended a good therapist. He was the one who encouraged me to start teaching. "I'm doing well," I said, "really well." He nodded, his smile widening. "I can tell." We stood there for a moment, and then he said, "You know what you're doing here? It matters. You're helping people. You're giving them the tools they need to protect themselves." I looked around the empty classroom, the folding chairs, the whiteboard, the projector, still glowing softly. "I just don't want anyone else to go through what I went through," I said quietly. "And they won't," Gerald said. "Not if they have someone like you in their corner." After he left, I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Portland stretched out before me, gray skies, green trees, the river winding through downtown. It wasn't home yet, not the way Idaho had been, but it was becoming something, a new beginning. I smiled. I had survived, and now I was helping others do the same. Looking back, I realized that silence almost destroyed me. If you're facing family drama stories like mine, where someone you love is manipulating you, stealing your identity, please don't stay silent the way I did. Speak up. Reach out. Ask for help. Grandma stories like this aren't just cautionary tales. They're reminders that abuse doesn't always come with bruises. Sometimes it comes with forged signatures and words that cut deeper than any weapon. I've learned that family drama stories happen everywhere, and speaking out is the first step towards survival. If you're a senior navigating difficult family drama, stories know that your voice matters. I've heard so many grandma stories from others who thought they were alone, but they weren't. Neither are you. My faith taught me that God never gives us more than we can handle, but He also doesn't expect us to carry our burdens alone. I had to learn that the hard way. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Never let anyone convince you that asking for help is weakness. To all the grandma stories waiting to be told, don't let fear silence you. Your courage could save your life, and maybe someone else's too. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the very end. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and tell me, what would you do if you found yourself in my situation? Your perspective truly matters to me. If my story resonated with you, I'd be honored if you subscribed so you won't miss my future videos. A gentle reminder, while I drew inspiration from real-world issues, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If my content isn't quite your preference, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.